Okay, so this is going to be a little bit more of an informal video in a sense where I'm kind of thinking actually of doing more live videos. I'll probably set them up like this and stuff. As I mentioned in my previous video, what I'm actually more interested in sharing with you nowadays, because I've done so many tutorials, right? I think what I'm more interested in is sharing more personal experiences, but that doesn't just have to be like experiences. I actually also want to share with you personally how I think about even something that relates to improv. And as you see by the title of the video, I'm talking about why Charlie Parker is irrelevant for me anyway. When I think about all of the times that I have soloed, whether it be over a jazz tune, some of my own compositions, you're just not always going to be soloing over jazz tunes, right? But I find that Charlie Parker's language, and even a player like Bud Powell, of course, is just so relevant when it comes to improv. Like, I can't actually imagine what else I would be primarily drawing from when I'm improvising if I'm not looking to, the style of bebop playing. Things that Parker does. For example, some of the things that Charlie Parker plays in the head of Donnelly. Lots of outlining of the chords using the bebop major scale. These kinds of. It's a very intricate language. I spent some time, looking at that style of playing. And for me, when I improvise, the main way that I improvise is stuff that I've borrowed from Charlie Parker, Bud Powell. Sonny Clark is another favorite player of mine. And I was just kind of thinking, like, recently I was in Switzerland and we played at the Bird's Eye, right? And I was kind of listening to all of the recordings. And of course, I've come a long way in terms of my own playing and whatnot. Just kind of like having a little retrospective moment. And as I was playing, I was just kind of hearing all of that language. And I'm just like, my music is not like, straight ahead jazz tunes or jazz standards. My music is not straight ahead jazz standards, right? But when I listen to myself improv, and I know because when the things that I hear and the things that I play are informed by Charlie Parker's language. And to me, this player, Charlie Parker, is so relevant even in 2025. And I think that also speaks to the definition of, you want to check some of your favorite players in jazz history, and then when it comes to your own stuff, when you're improvising, you kind of create. The creativity really truly happens when you are in the moment and you're hearing all of those things that you've worked on by some of your favorite jazz players, and in the moment how you choose to put it together really is what improv is, what jazz improv is to me. Obviously, I don't just play bebop language. I, like modern patterns and shapes. Some things that I like, scales, scale runs, things like this, and just other players that obviously have influenced me. But I just find that Charlie Parker's language is just so fundamental to jazz improvisation that I myself, as I was saying, I was kind of like reflecting and listening to myself play in this recent gig that I did. And I'm just like, man, Charlie Parker is just, he's spoken about a lot. maybe sometimes we actually underestimate how powerful his playing was and how useful his playing was. Because if you actually just check some of his heads, Confirmation, Opera Vav, Donna Lee, such a meticulous way of creating these lines. I mean, look, if because this progression that I was playing on earlier here, this is what I have: E flat major to D minor 7, E flat major to D minor 7. And I mean, this is a tune of mine, by the way, and some of you who listen to my music will know what song this is, but the song is not really relevant. My point is that when you come across chord progressions that are not so straight ahead, if you're always practicing jazz and whatnot, that language of Charlie Parker's is irrelevant. Bebop language is irrelevant, even if you're playing other styles. I think that's what builds music. That's what builds a strong solo. So for example, I might do, by the way, if I'm playing E flat major to D minor, sometimes I may alternate between E flat major and D7, because the home key of this tune is actually G minor. But it's like I'm starting on the 6th degree, right? If you think of harmonic minor, the scale, the 6th degree would be major 7, and the chord 5 obviously would be D7. But I also alternate between D minor, just because you could also think of it as B flat major, so that's kind of like modal interchange and whatnot. But my first way I would think of improvising is some of the things that my favorite bop players play. Things like this comes from Donna Lee. We have when you're on the 3rd of a dominant, you can pivot, or you can go up, as in outline that dominant chord upward, so stuff like that. Outlining of arpeggios. So this would be C minor, which is just the chord 4 of G minor. I could also just outline G minor. Again, remember, this particular progression in this composition, the composition is in G minor, so that's fundamentally what I'm thinking of here. So I could think about like chord 4 to 5 to the 1, But obviously I'm not landing on 1, I'm landing on 6. But G minor is like E flat major sharp 11. So this E flat major has a sharp 11. This is a Charlie Parker line where if you have a C minor 7, you start on the 7, you walk your way to the 6, walk your way to the 5th of the chord, Maybe I'll do that on G minor. Some blues lines. Some things that I've transcribed in the past But when you transcribe a bunch of stuff, you kind of put them together creatively, and you'll be able to see, even in non-jazz tunes, like even if I'm not playing Donnelly, because I could improvise over Donnelly. Whatever. I could solo over Donnelly, but those same lines I can use in a non-traditional. I don't know if that's what I would call it, in a non, like, straight ahead jazz tune. I could use it in this kind of like progression, or any. I mean, the tune then moves to. So the tune goes. That's the first part, right? And then it goes to basically just shifts keys to F minor now. Goes back to G minor. That's the A section of the composition. And even if when I move to that the F minor, what's happening here is D major to E flat 7 in that F minor section to A flat major. But even here, I'm gonna be thinking. Bebop scale. I'm using bebop language with other things, like some of my patterns that I like. Stuff like that. So pretty much that's what this video was about, is that sometimes too, when we check our favorite players, you'll find that they actually have spent time with early bebop players. And even though when they write their own compositions, which will obviously be more modern, not obviously, but most likely be more modern, and you into that style, when you really dig into the people that they check and why they're able to play the way that they're able to play, is because they've actually spent the time checking out, the roots of bebop, the pioneers of bebop playing, for the trumpet players, Dizzy Gillespie. And so, I don't know, other than that, I'm not just saying it to say you must do your due diligence, and you should, but I'm actually saying it to say, I'm making this video to say, if you really want your playing to be more wholesome, and not just, because here's the thing, you might look at a progression like this and see, oh, you could do like a pentatonic kind of thing. You could do stuff like that, more simple approaches. But some of the best players really dig into simple progressions. They really dig into those one chord vamps, and they're able to do that. I'm thinking of a player like McCoy Tyner. He does so much over one chord vamps. And the reason why he's able to do that is because he didn't just happen to be McCoy Tyner in the 1960s when he started recording. Some of his influences are Oscar Peterson. He really loved Bud Powell. And he even, one of his the people that influenced him, or I remember reading a story where he actually went to watch Art Tatum at a concert when he was around 11 years old, and that was kind of like the kicker that made him want to, master the piano and become a jazz player, I guess. So from as early as someone who plays stride piano like Art Tatum, and you see McCoy Tyner, what he's most famous for is a little bit more of that modern approach. That's what most people know him for. But when you dig deep into the things that he actually played or listen to some of his earlier albums, you'll see that, they check out these players. So that's just my 2 cents on that. I think it's really important. And I also did a Charlie Parker video actually on Donnelly specifically. So if you want to check that video out, I'll link it in the comment section. I'll link it in the description. And also too, I am currently trying to publish a book. So if you'd like to support me on that, I'll leave a link in the comment section. Okay, I hope this video helped.